Hare Krishna, good morning from Sridham Mayapur, dear devotees. It's our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. My name is Madhavananda Das, and today we're going to speak about a very sober topic, the return to Vrindavan by Nanda Maharaj without Krishna, and what happened when he returned. So we'll begin with a few prayers. Gora Graganya Gana Gota Goloruharam Goranga Gura Chama Gopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachiya Dile Kakola Kahe Premananda He Mona Goranga Hridoya Dariya Bola Bhaja Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jejana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya, Prema Bhidana Parama Pumarta, Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya. Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. This is the 19th session in our discussion about the meeting in Kurukshetra. We still haven't left Vrindavan. But we spoke about Krishna's departure from Vrindavan and what happened in Mathura and why it is that Krishna didn't return to Vrindavan with Nanda Maharaj. And today we have a very sober topic. What happened when Nanda Maharaj returned to Vrindavan alone? Now in our last session we spoke something from a very esoteric purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, wherein he described how Krishna actually did return to Vrindavan with Nanda Maharaj. But Krishna expanded himself in two forms. One form stayed in Mathura with Devaki and Vasudeva, and the other form returned to Vrindavan with Nanda Maharaj. And just as he expanded himself, he also expanded Nanda Maharaj and the boys, and one set of boys returned with Krishna, and the other set of boys and Nanda Maharaj returned alone. And in that regard, we spoke something about how Vishwanath explains there are two chambers in Vrindavan. One is a chamber of union, and the other is a chamber of separation. And that's an important foundational principle for our discussion about Kurukshetra Leela, and we'll return to this point in some later sessions. So let's review a little bit more. We heard from the 45th chapter of the 10th canto how Krishna and Balaram were speaking very sweet words to Nanda Maharaj and saying, actually, you're really our parents because snigdabhyam poshitam, you maintained us. And our acharyas have described that indirectly they're saying here that actually you're our real parents, and we don't believe this statements from some of the residents of Mathura who are claiming that actually Devaki and Vasudeva are our real parents. We don't believe that. But then in the 23rd verse of this chapter, Krishna told Nanda Baba, Yatu yuyam brajam tata vayam cha sneha dukitan gyatin vadrastun eshyamo vidhaya suridham sukham. He said, now you should all return to Vrindavan, dear Father, and we'll come to see you. And our relatives who suffer in separation from us will also come to see them just as soon, vidaya suridam sukham, after we give some sukh, some happiness to those personalities who are your surida, or your loving friends. And then the 25th verse of this chapter described how ityuktasto parishvajya nanda pranaya vivala purayan ashubhir netre saha gopar bhajam yayo, that Nanda Maharaj became overwhelmed with affection when he heard the words of Krishna. Pranaya vivala, it said. Pranaya means with affection, and vivala, he became completely overwhelmed. And at that time, Purayan Ashubhir Netre, tears began to flow from his eyes, and he embraced Krishna and Balaram. And then Nanda Maharaj began to return to Vrindavan without them. And we spoke how Nanda Maharaj would get on the chariot and start to go, but then he would jump off the chariot and he would return. He was going back and forth. In some previous discussions, we spoke about the different types of separation. Purvarag, Man, Prema Vaichitya, and Prabhas, or separation before meeting, separation due to some loving sulky anger, separation which inconceivably takes place when the lover and the beloved are present, and that's known as Prema Vaichitya. And Prabhas, or separation when they can't see Krishna for some time. And there's two types of Prabhas, Dura Prabhas and Sudura Prabhas. Dura Prabhas is when Krishna goes to Kamyavan or some forest for the day and the gopis are not able to see him for some time. And Sudura Prabhas is when Krishna leaves for Mathura, the Dwarka, and they don't know if they're ever going to see him again at night or not. And there are three types of Sudura Prabhas, Bhavi, Bhuta, and Bhavan. Bhavi Sudura Prabhas is in the future, and this is when Akrura came to Vrindavan to take Krishna away. It hadn't happened yet. Bhavi Sudura Prabhas takes place in the heart of Nanda Maharaj when he's in Mathura, and he knows, I'm going to have to leave to return to Vrindavan, but he hears from Krishna that Krishna tells his father, I'm going to return, but I have some work I have to do here. So it hasn't happened yet. It's coming. Bhuta, Sudura Prabhas, is that separation from a distance which has already happened. It's more acute. This is when Akrura has already taken Krishna away from Vrindavan. This is when Nanda Maharaj has left crying and crying, sobbing on his way to return to Vrindavan without Krishna. This is Bhuta Sudura Prabhas. And Bhavan Sudura Prabhas is the most intense of all. Bhavan Sudura Prabhas is in the act of happening. When Akrura was taking away the pranakanta, or the most beloved of the gopis' lives, this Bhavan Sudura Prabhas, in the act of happening, is when Nanda Maharaj was leaving Mathura and leaving Krishna there. Srila Prabhupada has described in his Krishna book something of the purpose of this separation. And as we discussed from our last session, this separation was conducted by Krishna for the purpose of glorifying the gopis. It was conducted for the purpose of raising their feelings and making them more and more intense. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, several times we've mentioned in our classes, in that purport, he says that just as a goldsmith heats gold with fire and melts it to prove the purity of the gold, Krishna, to display the purity of the love of the gopis of Vrindavan, he subjected them to the fire of separation. But don't think that this separation is some kind of cruelty. Okay, Krishna is glorifying the gopis by this, but it's actually a really terrible thing for them. In the Krishna book, in chapter 35, Srila Prabhupada writes, devotional service to Krishna in feelings of separation elevates the devotee to the highest perfectional level, to the level of the gopis. And he writes, those who are in the disciplic succession of the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya should always feel separation from Krishna, worship his transcendental form, and discuss his transcendental teachings, his pastimes, his qualities, and his entourage. That will enrich the devotees to the highest devotional perfection. Feeling constant separation while engaged in the service of the Lord is a perfection of Krishna consciousness. So this is our purpose. Srila Prabhupada is saying here that those persons who are in this disciplic succession of the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, we should always discuss about Krishna. And we should simultaneously feel separation. So that comes about by hearing about pastimes like this meeting in Kurukshetra and the events which led up to it. And Srila Prabhupada, again in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is in Adi Lila chapter 13, in text 39, he says, a person who is advanced in Krishna consciousness advanced in Krishna consciousness always feels separation from Krishna, because such a feeling of separation excels the feeling of meeting Krishna. This is the same point that we were making in some of our previous discussions, that Krishna orchestrated his departure from Mathura, not just for the purpose of vinashaya to duskritam dharma samstapanartaya, for the purpose of killing the demons, killing Sishupal and Dantavakra and the other demons. It wasn't just for the purpose of delivering the devotees in Mathura and Dwarka, or establishing religion and speaking the Bhagavad Gita. Those were external. But Krishna's internal purpose is all entwined with the hearts of the Brijbasis. He's completely controlled by them. Don't think he's controlled by the residents of Mathura, or he's controlled by the important work of speaking Bhagavad Gita. Those are gona hetu, or secondary purposes, whereas the primary cause, the mukhya hetu, is to reciprocate with the feelings of the residents in Vrindavan. And therefore he plunges them in separation. Externally it seems to be separation, but internally it's union. And therefore Srila Jiva Goswami, in his Priti Sandarbha, Anucheta 370, he defines vipralamba, or separation, in a very astonishing way. Tatra vipralambo viprakarshena lamba praptir yasya tata. He says that vipralamba means, the word lamba means to attain something. It means to get something. And vipra means from a distance. Vipralamba means to attain something from a distance. Or in the language of my Guru Maharaj, it means external separation, but internal union. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes, again in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is Madhya Lila chapter 4, text 197, in his purport, he says, worship and separation is considered by the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya to be the topmost level of devotional service. Don't think that, it's more important that for Krishna to reciprocate with the residents of Mathura and Dwarka than it is for him to reciprocate with the residents of Vrindavan, and that's why he left. Don't think that because he has to kill the demons, that's more important than the reciprocate the love of the residents of Vrindavan. Don't think that his purpose in establishing Dharma and speaking Bhagavad Gita is more important than his love for the residents of Vrindavan, and that's why he had to leave. No. He wanted to establish this Vipralambha, to raise the ecstasy of the residents of Vrindavan. Therefore, Prabhupada, in a letter to Jadharani in 1968, very, very early, now this is when Prabhupada was having to leave America, he wrote a letter to her on the 13th of January. He said, yes, the ecstasy of separation from the spiritual master is even greater ecstasy than meeting with him. That's a very difficult thing to understand. It's a very difficult thing to digest. And don't misunderstand and think that, oh, because that ecstasy of separation is greater, therefore in our worship of Radha and Krishna, the deities on the altar, then we're going to put Radharani in a different room and put Krishna on the altar by himself so they can relish the ecstasy of separation. Radha Krishna Pranamur Yugala Kishore Jivane Marane, that my life and soul is to bring together Radha and Krishna. These are the words of Narottam Das Thakur. This is the purpose of our sampradaya. But to bring them together, and that's called Samriddhiman Sambhog, or fully enriched union. That Samriddhiman Sambhog only takes place after Sudura Prabhas, after the greatest separation. The greatest union takes place after the greatest separation. And therefore, my Guru Maharaj said that this Prema Dhara, this river of love in Vrindavan, has two tattas, or two embankments, Sambhog tatta and Vipralambha tatta. The embankment of union and the embankment of separation. And both are required. And it's not that the separation is such a terrible thing, although it feels worse than death, but still that separation, the ecstasy in that separation, which for Srimati Radharani is known as Madhanakya Mahabhav, is the greatest ecstasy. It's even greater ecstasy than meeting Krishna externally, because that separation is not really separation. This is a very difficult thing to understand. And therefore, tatra vipralamba viprakarshena lamba praptir yashasatata. Vipralamba means praptir, means to attain. Lamba means to attain. Krishna means to get him. So there's external separation, but internal union. It's inconceivable. And this is a very foundational principle in our discussion about the meeting in Kurukshetra. So now let's go on with our Leela today. What happened after Nanda Maharaj finally managed to start the chariot and they started leaving Mathura? Now, without even hearing it from our previous acharyas, we know for a fact that Nanda Maharaj and all the boys must have been turning back and looking at Krishna, and they must have all been crying and crying. And Krishna must have been following something behind, until finally they went to a certain point where they could no longer see Krishna. And then Nanda Maharaj, bowing down his head, he continued to that journey to Vrindavan alone without Krishna. Now, we'd heard previously from Jiva Goswami and Gopal Champu how Nanda Maharaj sent a letter to his older brothers, Upananda and others, that Krishna's going to remain in Mathura and I'm returning alone. But when they got that letter, it was such a shock, they couldn't believe it. They thought, why is he writing like this? That's not a very funny joke anyway. He's coming. Let's all go. And so everyone was there, and they were all very excited when they saw finally the dust in the distance coming from the chariot of Nanda Maharaj, and everyone started calling out, "Hey, Krishna's returning! Krishna's returning! Come, come! Everyone, let's give a big reception to Krishna and show him that we were waiting for him and that we love him. And that we didn't forget him." And so they were all waiting very excitedly and looking with eager, ecstatic faces to that chariot of Nanda Maharaj. And then Nanda Maharaj's chariot began to arrive, and they were all looking. Hey, where's Krishna? And someone perhaps said, that cheeky little boy, he's hiding there in the chariot. He must be hiding, playing a joke on us. And they all looked to the face of Nanda Maharaj to confirm that this is just some joke. Krishna is hiding somewhere in the chariot, or perhaps Krishna's coming a few meters in distance. But when they looked at the face of Nanda Maharaj, they were shocked to see that Nanda Maharaj wouldn't return their glance. Rather, he was just looking down. And he couldn't look at the face of the Brijbasis who were waiting there for Krishna. And without saying anything to them, quietly he just went to his home. And Nanda Maharaj locked himself up in the home. And he didn't come out for several days. Finally, Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita describes that a messenger came to speak to Nanda Maharaj, and he told him, "Tatastwad gamanasam cha hitva saha yasodaya mritya praya bhavan matra rebi re anasanam mahat." And he said that the residents of Vrindavan, including Mother Yashoda, now, he says that asam cha hitva, they've given up all hope. And now they're refusing to eat. And instead, anasanam mahat, they've begun to fast to death. They decided that Krishna's not returning. Nanda Maharaj can't speak to us. He doesn't have to speak to us. We understand. Krishna's not coming home. He's not going to return. So why should we live? Better now that we should die. And so they all began to fast until death. This was the message that Nanda Maharaj got. And it was that message which impelled him to come out to speak to the Brijbasis. Without that message, Nanda Maharaj had no strength on his own to come out to face them. And so he came out of his home. And all of them were gathered there together. Everyone was crying and looking down on the ground. And at that time, Nanda Maharaj told them, "Please don't be like this. Krishna loves all of you so much. Don't you remember Krishna's words? Krishna promised Ayasya. When he was leaving, he sent a messenger. And he said, I'm returning very soon. Krishna told me in Mathura that his real parents are Yashoda and myself. He told me that he doesn't believe that Devaki and Vasudeva are his parents, but he has to stay there for some days. Because if he doesn't stay there, then how will they live? They'll all die. And it's not fair to them. Because they never had association with Krishna. So Krishna requested me, Father, please, out of concern for your friends, out of concern for Vasudeva, I'll stay just for a few days and you please let me. And definitely I'm returning. And then Nanda Maharaj told them, don't think that Krishna's forgotten you. Krishna sent so many gifts for you. This is what happens when you leave your home and you go to a distant place. You're living in St. Petersburg, you're living in Russia, and you go to India. And so then when you return, you haven't seen your mother in a long time. You haven't seen your brother, you haven't seen your family members and friends, what do? You bring some gifts. Especially, this is there for people from the village. When someone goes to the big city, that's a big, big thing. And Krishna now, he's gone to the big city of Mathura. And Nanda Maharaja, and he told them, please understand, Krishna loves you. And he sent these gifts for you. He's thinking about you. The Bhagavatam described in the 10th canto, chapter 44, 5, text 24. Evam santyaya bhagavan nandam swabrajam achyuta vaso lankara kupyadayar arhayam asasadaram. That Krishna, he did this work, santvaya. He consoled Nanda Maharaj and the Brijbasis who were in Mathura. And before he left, he loaded them up with a lankar, with so many jewelry for the gopis, for Mother Yashoda. And also kupya, some practical things, because the ladies, you want to please the ladies. The ladies are very absorbed in their household duties. And so he sent some very nice vessels from Mathura that were made out of gold and silver for their cooking, because the heart of Mother Yashoda is to serve Krishna. And so Krishna sent those very thoughtful gifts. And he gave them to Nanda Maharaj. It said, Arhayam, Asasadaram. He honored them, Arhayam, Asasadaram, very, very respectfully. But Sanatana Goswami says, he describes in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the response, the reaction of the Brijbasis when Nanda Maharaj finally came out and he gave those gifts sent by Krishna. Could you imagine if someone comes to you and says, hey, Prabhuji, excuse me, this is an amazing thing, but Krishna sent this for you. And they presented a necklace, or they presented some clothing, they presented a pot or some article. How would you feel? You'd probably write about it on Facebook and share some pictures. Oh my God, this is amazing. Krishna sent this thing. I was wondering, is he real? Is Krishna genuine? But he sent this gift for me. We should all understand, Krishna's sent a gift for all of us. Krishna's personally come for all of us in the form of the holy name, in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna stayed in this world to give us this gift, and we should understand. And just as Nanda Maharaj presented these gifts to the residents of Vrindavan, so in the same way, the gifts that Krishna sent us are also presented by his messenger in the form of Sri Guru. And we get those gifts from them. We can't get those gifts on our own. They're only received through the hand of Krishna's loving messenger. So in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami describes the reaction of the Brijbasis when they got those gifts. Again, just imagine how we would feel. He says, Purvam Nandasya Sangatya Bhagavata Bhavata Presitani Te Bhushanadani Drisvochur Mitto Magna Sug Ambudo. That when they got these gifts, they began to speak amongst themselves. This verse was spoken by Uddhava to Krishna. Uddhava, when he returned to Mathura, he was sent later, we may discuss that, he was sent by Krishna to Vrindavan with a message of love, and he spoke to them. And then he returned to Mathura to give a report to Krishna. And so he spoke this verse at that time. And he gave this report. This is what happened. He said, when those gifts that you sent with Nanda Maharaj were given to the residents of Vrindavan. And he says at that time, Mito Magna Sug Ambudo. The word magna means to submerge, like someone jumps into an ocean. Magna Shuk. There's so much lamentation. It was ambudo, an ocean of lamentation, and they began to drown in that ocean of lamentation. And Sanatana Goswami comments on this verse. He says that the jewelry Krishna sent was mainly meant for the women of Vrindavan, the elderly gopis and things. But Uddhava doesn't mention this confidential fact. In the next verse, Uddhava describes to Krishna more about the reaction of the Brijbasis. And what did they say? What did they say? Just like if you send someone a present, you offer some, we all want to know, what did they say? You cook for your Guru Maharaj, and then you want to know, was he happy? Did he take seconds? Did he eat a lot? Did he say something about it? That's the nature of loving exchanges. We want to know what was the reaction. And so Krishna, of course, he's very eager to know. I sent these gifts of love. What was the reaction? What did they say, Uddhava? And perhaps Uddhava hesitated for a moment, because perhaps he didn't want to tell Krishna what was their reaction. And Krishna must have pressed him. Tell me, what did they say? And Uddhava says, well, if you really want to know. Aho bata mahat kashtam vayam etad abhipsava eta prasada yogyascha kshata krishnena samprati. The Brijbasis, these are the words that they spoke. They said, Aho bata mahat kashtam. This is mahat kashtam, so very, very painful. And the word kashta is also a Bengali and Oriya word. It means to suffer. They have so much pain. Aho bata. They're exclaiming, Aho bata mahat kashtam. This is so painful for us. Vayameta abhipsava. They said, what is this? Krishna thinks that we want these goddamn things? That we want some trinkets? That we want a necklace? That we want a pot? He thinks that, Eta prasada yogish, this is the mercy that we deserve? This is his reciprocation for our love? He's going to send us some damn trinkets? I remember when I was a little boy, sometimes my parents, they would take me to the circus, and we would go to the fair or some amusement park or something. And when we were there, they would buy some little trinkets for us. And we would think, oh yes, my parents love me because I got these trinkets. Don't think the residents of Vrindavan are going to be so easily pacified like a small child who gets a little plastic toy or something. Krishna must have been very shocked to hear those words. And he must have asked Uddhava, did they say anything else? Uddhava said, oh yes, they said something else, but I don't know if you want to hear that. No. Tell me, what did they say, Uddhava? He said, okay. This is what they said. They told me to deliver this message. Tad asmaj jivanam dig tistet kante dunapiyat. Nanda gopam shadig ye tam chotaitan upaya. They use this word, dik, twice. Dik means the hell with. That means it damned. Tadasmaj jivanam dik. Jivana means our lives. To hell with our lives. Our lives are condemned. That somehow our lives, kante, they're residing in our throat. They've left our hearts. But somehow they're residing there in our throat. We become so choked up that Krishna's leaving. Nanda Gopam Chadik. To hell with Nanda Maharaj. Damn this Nanda Maharaj. Damn the cowherd boys. Brijbasis never speak like this. This must have been such a shock to Krishna. Not only are they condemning Krishna, but they're condemning Nanda Maharaj. They say, let Nanda Maharaj go to hell. Damn him. How has he returned here to Vrindavan without Krishna? And Nanda Maharaj, you want to give us some plastic trinkets and try to tell us that this is Krishna's love for us? To hell with Krishna. To hell with you. Dik, ye Tom. To hell with you. That Chakvaitani Upaniyan, you left Krishna behind. And Upani, you brought these trinkets, these damn things for us. And then at that time, Nanda Maharaj, can you imagine how he's feeling, having to return to Vrindavan without Krishna and disappointing the Brajbasis in such a terrible way. And then offering some gifts. No, it's not so bad. Please, Krishna sent these gifts with love for you. And then throwing those gifts down on the ground. And cursing Krishna, cursing Nanda Maharaj. At that time, Nanda Maharaj told him, no, you should accept these things. And Uddhava explained to Krishna, Shri Krishna tra samagatya prasada dravya sangrahat vikshadhyasa palakanasman nitaram kripayishyati. On the suggestion of Nanda Maharaj, they said, no, don't be like this. If you are so angry with Krishna, it'll hurt Krishna's soft heart. Krishna's feeling so much separation from all of you. Don't you remember the letters that he sent with so much love to all of you? And Krishna, with great love, sent these gifts. Krishna promised Ayasya, he's going to return. And when he returns, if he sees that the gifts that he sent are lying on the road, broken and discarded from you, and Krishna hears that you cursed him, Krishna will feel very, very hurt. So Uddhava told this to Krishna, that the Brajbasis were thinking, Sri Krishna tra samagatya. The samagatya, when Krishna returns, prasada dravya sangrahat. These things that he sent us, actually these are prasad dravya. These are Krishna's remnants. This is Krishna's mercy. And sangrahat, by accepting these things, then viksajja palakan asman. By accepting these things, they'll see that these things kept us alive. These things we accepted as Krishna's mercy. And by accepting them, Krishna will see that we didn't forget him and that we claimed the love of Krishna. So this is also an important message for us. We should claim the gifts that Krishna has given us. And although we don't see Krishna, and although we may be in separation from Guru, we may be suffering Duraprabhas. We don't see Gurudev because he's in Vrindavan, or Gurudev's in America, and we're in Russia, we're in some other distant place. We're suffering from Duraprabhas, separation from Gurudev. Or it may be Suduraprabhas. That Gurudev has left this world. Just as Srila Prabhupada's left this world, and we observed his disappearance a few days ago. But we should claim the gifts that they left behind us. And those, by claiming those gifts, we'll manage to stay alive. Because those gifts are prasada dravya. They're the mercy of Krishna. They're his personified mercy. And by accepting those gifts, we'll indicate our love for our Gurudev. We'll indicate our love for Krishna. And that we're waiting for that day when Krishna appears in the form of the holy name. We're waiting for that day when we can become reunited physically with our Gurudev. And we're maintaining our lives by keeping these gifts very close to our heart. And what are those gifts? Namasheshta manamapi sachiputram matra sarupam. The gifts of Gurudev have been described by Raghunath Das Goswami as beginning with the holy name, beginning with the order of Gurudev, the instructions of Gurudev. And this is the comments of the Brajbasis, Viksha Agya, the Agya, seeing that we're accepting Sangrahat Viksha, we're accepting the order of Krishna. And we're Palaka. We're very faithful followers of Krishna. Then, when seeing that, then Kripa Yishyati. Krishna's going to show his mercy to us. Gurudev will show his mercy to us. And what is our meditation? What is our service? We're doing this bhajan to help the elevated devotees who are feeling separation, who want to be reminded of Krishna. We're assisting our Gurudev who's feeling separation from Krishna. We can't feel that separation. And in turn, our Gurudev is assisting his Gurudev. He's doing bhajan and kirtan for the pleasure of his guru who's feeling separation. He's doing bhajan and kirtan for the pleasure of his guru. This is a kirtan of our sampradaya, and we're all serving Rupa and Raghunath Goswamis, who in turn are serving Swarup Damodar Goswami and Roy Ramananda, who in turn are serving Krishna in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna who's come to repay his debt to Srimati Radharani by experiencing the feelings of separation that she has. And the only way to keep Radharani alive when she's feeling such separation, the only way to keep the Brijbasis alive when they're feeling such separation, is to do kirtan. That kirtan keeps them alive, because in that kirtan, in that Vipralamba kirtan, there's union. And this is our occupation. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he once said, our supreme occupation is to serve the residents of Vrindavan who are afflicted by separation from Krishna. This is our supreme occupation. This is our business. So I'm going to stop here. And tomorrow, in our next session, which will be tomorrow, we'll speak something more about these feelings of separation and the purport of it. I want to thank the different devotees, such as Natalia and others who have been taking part in our discussion today, Sadhu Marg Prabhu, and ask the devotees now if they have any reflections that we can share with each other, something that touched your heart, or something you appreciate. Achincha Nittai Prabhu has offered a question. He says that, in case you have time, please consider this question. In regard to the Lord applying punishment that fit perfectly with the crime committed, also there's plenty of evidence that the Lord is extremely merciful in the form of Lord Chaitanya. How to reconcile the apparently disproportionate or excessive punishment that we often find throughout the scriptures, such as the Puranas and Bhagavatam, 5th canto. That punishment is actually kripa. We should understand it's actually mercy. There's different types of mercy. A father has different sons, and one son is very obedient to the father, and he's serving the father with love. He's following the instructions of the father. Another son is engaged in illegal activities. He's stealing things, maybe he's abusing women, he's doing very bad things. The father is praising the one son, but he's punishing the other son. But don't think that it means that the father is partial and that he has more love for the son who follows, although he appreciates that. He also has love for the son who's misbehaving. And that love is manifested in different ways. It's manifested by encouraging the son who's behaving properly, and it's manifested in the form of punishment and harsh words for the son who's misbehaving. But because he's punishing him doesn't mean it's hatred or any less mercy. He sees this is what's required. Sometimes we require a good slap. My Guru Maharaj, he spoke many things of philosophy. But he also, and I listened, and I tried to remember those things, and I tried to repeat those things. But he also slapped me in the face, at least twice. He struck me and chastised me. But that chastisement was the greatest mercy. And I embraced it, and I claim that chastisement. That's the mercy of my Gurudev. So it's not that it's wrong. Doesn't mean that it's not mercy. It's also mercy, and we should accept it. Sadhu Marg Prabhu is asking, are there stages or levels one has to go through to reach the feelings of mood of separation? What efforts are needed from our side to develop this mood? When we think about, my response, when we think about Rupa Goswami's description in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of the gradual development of bhakti, it answers your question. Dadado Shraddha. In the beginning, some faith is required. And so we should hear And then we develop faith in a sadhu. And we want to hear more from that sadhu. And then the next stage comes bhajana kriya. When we have faith in that sadhu, then we're engaged in hearing and chanting and kirtan from that sadhu. And we render service to that sadhu. And Shushushoshadanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Shammahat Seva Vipra Punyatirtha Seva. When we engage in that seva, that service to such a Mahatma, then we develop some feelings in our heart. We develop some love for that person. I remember hearing a few days ago, there was a Vyas Puja program for Parthasarathi Maharaj, and one of the devotees made a comment that really struck me. She was saying that I always wanted to come closer to Maharaj. I wanted to develop love for him and some feelings, but I didn't know how to do that. And she said then, when I began to serve him and cook for him, those feelings came up in my heart. That service means love. And therefore, we call it bhakti. Bhakti is devotion. But Prabhupada also described it as devotional service. You can't separate the service from the devotion. Devotion means that we're doing service. And by doing that service, these feelings will gradually come in our heart. And when we spend time with such a sadhu, and the kirtan is going, and he's singing in such a wonderful way, and he's speaking in such a wonderful way, but then it's finished for the day, and he goes back to his room. We feel a little sad. Oh, I wish it could keep going. We feel some separation. And then, when the festival is over, and Maharaj, as sadhu, has to return to some other place, he goes somewhere else, then we feel so much more separation. And then when he goes to another continent, we feel so much more separation. And what to speak when he leaves this world. So those feelings are gradually cultivated through this service. Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji, I think it is, she's saying devotional service is a gift given to us by Sri Guru. Only with this consciousness, humility, and other favorable qualities come. How can we stay grounded there, Prabhuji? Srila Vyasadeva has described the 10 offenses in the Padma Purana. And the last of the 10 offenses, Aham Mama Bhav, to think that I'm this body, that's like a nuclear bomb being dropped in our head. Right? Oh my God, how am I going to not think I'm my body? That's a very, very difficult thing. So the next verse in the Padma Purana gives us a clue. And Srila Vyasadeva says that Nama Parada Yuktanam. He said, okay, you may be Yuktanam. You may have this Nama Parada. Nama Parada Yuktanam. Nama Nyeva Haranchigam Pavishyanti Upayuktani Nanavyata Paranicha. That you keep chanting. Don't stop chanting. Even you don't have any feeling. Even it's an offense. Even you're making some offense to the holy name. Okay, that's bad. Try to avoid it. But don't stop chanting. That's our grounded quality. Whether we have some bliss by going to the Bhagavatam class, or there's no bliss and it seems really boring, or we don't really feel like going to the kirtan, we don't really feel like chanting our japa, we should do it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Chaitanya Siksamrita says there's different motivations in our bhajan. Bhaya, Asha, Kartavya, Bhuti, and Rag. Bhaya means out of fear. I'm doing it because I'm going to go to hell if I don't do that. Bhaktivinoda said that's really bad. That's not a very good motivation for bhakti. Asha is another motivation. I want to get something. I want to get some money. I want to become famous as a great devotee who gives lots of classes and live streams on Facebook and YouTube. That's not a good motivation. That's very, very bad. Both of those are very disgusting. But still, they're motivations for bhakti, and it's better to do that with that motivation. Srila Prabhupada sometimes encouraged people, said, you're practically an incarnation. You're so great. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta compares this to hot rice and ghee. That you encourage someone by giving them some nice foodstuffs, and then they stay and they continue doing bhakti. But Bhaktivinoda says better than Bhaya and Asha is Kartavya Bhuti. Kartavya Bhuti means that I'm doing it because, not because I have any love, not because I have any ecstasy, but because I have this feeling of obligation to Gurudev. I promised. I made a vow. And therefore Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, they, at the time of initiation, the devotees, they have the system, the devotees make a vow, they make a promise. And as gentlemen and gentle ladies, we should keep that promise. That's kartavya beauty. The real motivation that we want to come to is rag. It is just out of devotion, out of some attraction, out of some love. But initially it may be bhaya, asha, or kartavya beauty. And we should continue with that and not stop. Nama parada yukta nam. Even we're chanting with offense. I hope that's helpful. Bindu Sundari is commenting, Tushta Krishna Prabhu, the husband of Bindu Sundari, is commenting, I experience your lila kata and sharing your realizations, tattvam siddhanta, as the essence of Param Drisva Nivartate. Thank you. Yeah, this is the essence of Param Drisva Nivartate. We want to hear about Krishna Lila. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on Prem Bhakti Chandrika we were speaking about last night, that the word Vakya in the song, in the Sri Guru Charana Padma song, he says the word Vakya, which means the words, that the words of Gurudev, Chittete Koriya Aikya, I want to keep that Vakya, keep it in my heart. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Vakya means Braj Leela. It means to understand Braj. That's the Vakya that I want to keep in my heart. This is our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. We want to keep this thing. But we can only speak it with persons who have some qualification. We're trying to speak these things for devotees on Facebook as a service to my Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Not because we're qualified for it, but this is our service. And it's not appropriate for non-devotees. Natalia in Estonia, thank you for taking part today, Natalia. And thank you, Tushta Krishna Prabhu, for your nice comment. Thank you, Leela Avatar Mataji, for taking part, and Ramananda Gopal Prabhu. Natalia is a comment. Did Uddhava really tell Krishna about the reaction of the Brijbasi so straight? Why couldn't he find anything else to say? Well, there's no mention in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Those comments about the harshness of Uddhava in a sense, and his comments to Krishna, that's from myself. But how else could it be? How else could it be? Uddhava is telling Krishna, this is really heavy. It's a really heavy thing. Because it was such a heavy thing. Right? And Natalia is saying, couldn't he find anything else to say? He had to tell Krishna. He had no choice. Krishna wanted to know, what was their reaction? And moreover, he's ordered by Krishna, and he's also inspired in the heart by Yoga Maya to continue this Leela. Because without Krishna hearing about the reaction of the Brijbasis, then this meeting in Kurukshetra won't have such intensity. And we'll hear more about that coming up. I hope that's okay, Nalia. Anil is commenting, thank you for the beautiful katha. I have a question. What to do in this COVID-19 atmosphere when devotees are not meeting much? How to deal with the absence of Sangha needed to keep chanting? Well, to meet the devotees is our life and soul. And when we can't meet the devotees, I think that's worse than death. What can we do? But at the same time, I remember once going to my Guru Maharaj and telling him that there was some devotees who were against him and they wanted this and that, and I'm very disturbed about it and I want to do something. And my Guru Maharaj just looked at me and he said, what can you do? There were some leading devotees who had some thing they wanted to chastise their Guru Maharaj or something. And so Guru Maharaj asked me, what can you do? And I just sat there because there was nothing that I could do. So Vaishnavas should understand, sometimes there's some things which we can't do anything about. It's a bitter pill. It's a very bitter pill for me right now, that I can't meet with the devotees very freely. I may say the hell with all these rules and government things, I'm just going to go and meet with them. But when I go and knock on the devotees' door, they don't want to open the door because they're worried about COVID-19. If I want to go and have a big festival here in Mayapur, the government will come with the police and stop it. So irregardless of my desire, I can't. It's not possible. So when there's some situation that comes when we can't control it, and we can't, then I suggest we should look at that as Krishna's arrangement. And we should look, what does Krishna want me to do? What does he want me to learn right now? We were discussing this recently, that we do have association with devotees. We're sitting here in the room right now with 2 other devotees. We have some association. We have some association online. But I can't freely associate so much with many devotees. So then what does it mean? I think that Krishna wants me to go deeper in the relationships that I do have. Because these relationships are so very, very important. Let me go deeper in terms of Krishna Katha, pure Krishna Katha, and not just talk about conspiracy things or angry things or criticizing devotees. Stop it. Don't talk about politics. It's poison. It'll kill us. The real disease is not COVID-19. The real disease is Vaishnava Aparad. And we'll die from that. COVID-19 is not going to kill anyone. Krishna will stop someone. Krishna will take away our body. We should understand that. Pushpa Gopal, our dear godbrother, he's commenting, it's wonderful that in the Harinam we can give some solace to the residents of Vrindavan, always being in the mood of service and also encouraging others to do the same. This is something I learned from my Guru Maharaj, that he spoke. And Pushpa Gopal Prabhu, and I heard from our Guru Maharaj. It's a very special, precious thing. Ramananda Gopal Prabhu, our Pujari from Simachala Desh, serves Lord Nrsingadev, said, in my quarantine time, I could experience a separation from my service in the devotees. That is a very good comment. Thank you. And it's also it's a better answer, I think, to Anil Saini, that perhaps Krishna wants us to feel separation. And that separation will help us to go deeper and deeper. And Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji is commenting, the real disease is Vaishnava Aparad. Yes, and she can say, because Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji, Usha here, she's a doctor, and she's dealing with it. But the real disease, to hell, excuse me for saying this, Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji is a doctor. I appreciate doctors. I give respect to them. But to hell with the doctors. To hell with all the medicine. To hell with all the hospitals. That's not the real need of the day. The real need of the day is bhakti, and to avoid this most terrible disease of Vaishnava Aparad. But we also do need doctors to take care of our bodies, to do service. We should understand that. But let's not misunderstand and think that my body's going to live forever. The bodies of all the devotees are going to live forever. Everyone's going to die. And no matter how good the doctor is, no matter how good the hospitals are, they're still going to die. The real need of the day is to cultivate our bhakti and avoid Vaishnava Aparad. So I'd like to ask now, just very briefly, Anapani Radha or others, do you have any reflections you want to share with us? Anybody else other than Anapani? Anapani? What reflections you have? What?
It's a thought and also kind of question. So when Krishna sent his gifts of love to Vrijavasis, did he understand that he will get this reaction, or he didn't?
How could he not understand that, isn't it? I mean, it's so obvious, I'm not returning, so I'm going to send you, some little plastic toys or something, and that's Krishna. But what is Krishna doing then by that? He's charming the hearts of the Brijbasis. Krishna likes it when they become angry, when they become sulky, and that loving anger is a type of intense ecstasy. Krishna's churning that.
And also this situation reminds me of this. My Guru Maharaj, he speak about this in one of his poems, that sometimes Krishna can send us these toys. We think we have a love towards him, and Krishna is sending these toys to check if we really have it, and to show us toys of fame, toys of money or whatever.
A new cell phone.
Yeah, something like this. Yeah, and it's help, and it shows us if we really appreciate it. Oh, I'm so happy to get that. So it means that we don't have that. So, and will check his devotees by sending his gifts and see his reaction also. It's interesting.
Many times I see devotees are praying, oh Krishna, I'm having a hard time practicing bhakti. My mind is so disturbed. I'm always thinking of the opposite sex. If I could just get married, if you'll just give me a husband, but I want it to come from you. I want it for bhakti because it'll help me in my bhakti. And then when we get that boy toy, the new husband, or Sasha, you hear this. We get that boy toy, or we get that new wife toy. What happens to us then? Do we still remember Krishna? It's a great test. Do we go deeper in our bhakti? We should. Or do we forget all about that? Now I have this new toy. Krishna sent me this toy. I have a new cell phone and it comes from Krishna. And we forget about Krishna. And we should be very, very careful with that. Anybody else? Anything? Krishna Kun has a comment. Subhasham.
At the same time, when Krishna does send us gifts, which are really from him and because he wants to send us, then you were saying how by accepting those gifts, that's how we stay alive. That sentence really hit me. Because that's Krishna's personified love for us at this time, in whatever shape or form it comes. And by accepting that gift, whatever gift he chooses to give to us, then that's us accepting his love, and that's how we are able to stay alive. I also really appreciated this simple thought that we shouldn't think that Krishna is leaving Vrindavan because he feels a greater need to reciprocate with Mathuravasis and Dwarkavasis than he does to reciprocate with the Brijvasis. That is his reciprocation with the Brijvasis, because he wants them to experience this Vipralamba, how to attain him from a distance, because that's not actually suffering, although it's external suffering, but it's actually a very, very intimate union in the heart. And you explained from Jiva Goswami how it means to attain something from a distance.
I'll give away the conclusion of our discussions. The conclusion of all of this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that this is Krishna's plunging a resonance of Vrindavan and the feelings of separation to show the glories of separation. And Krishna himself has to come as Mahaprabhu to experience that. One of the whole purposes of his leaving Vrindavan and plunging everyone in separation is to heighten their ecstasy, and then he himself is going to have to come and experience that as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay? Anything else from anybody? Okay, so we'll stop there. Again, I want to thank everybody very much. This katha doesn't belong to me. This belongs to my Guru Maharaj and the previous acharyas, and I'm just trying to purify my own heart by repeating these things. It's for my benefit, and it's a service for my Guru Maharaj and for Srila Prabhupada. And I want to thank all of you very much for helping to facilitate that service by hearing and reciprocating. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Vancha